Are deficits made? Are these deficits really hurt us? Today, the book which we will be discussing is The Deficit Myth, that is written by Stephanie Kelton. Stephanie Kelton wrote this book to guide us that does these deficit matters, like the political narratives about the deficit, that it's really bad thing or it's really hurting our economy. It's really that bad. So the first thing that we can illustrate here is that the political debates always just less radicalize the facts that the economy is a simple thing. But economy isn't a simple thing. Economy is really complex thing. It's like all of the factors must be in equilibrium for this. Now here, if we see that many political narratives are that you should live within your means, but how can we live within our means if our spendings are more? So Stephanie Kelton here uses the modern monetary theory and tells us that how we can build a better economy. Now, the first thing here we have identified is the modern monetary theory. Now, what is modern monetary theory? The modern monetary theory mainly tells us that the government prints money. So how can they run out of money because they are printing this money? So they can't go into deficit or something that means deficit or less money. Now, here the first thing is that the government always tells us, or the political narratives is that we can't spend money because we don't have enough taxes, or we can't borrow money because we have a lot of deficit. But the thing is that we are mainly printing our money. So if a government is printing money, so how can we say that this thing can run out of it? Now, the first thing is that either this deficit, first we have to understand that what's the problem within the deficit. If the deficit is productive, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that how much is the size of the deficit, how you utilize those deficits or how you use the spending. That's the main problem in this. Now, here we understand that there is another analogy that is used in the political narratives, that the government spending is equal to household spending. But the government spending are not equal to household spending. The government mainly prints money, whereas the household doesn't print money. They earn money, they give taxes in the economy. So it's a bigger problem that we analogy this. It's a wrong analogy. Political leaders always tells us that we mainly can't afford these things. We can't afford your education, we can't afford the infrastructure, the development or the development budgets or the defense budget or something for employment or minimum wages or for social safety net. But the thing is, government affords things, but they have to use their money mainly really like audaciously or really with concern. This book is also about the sovereign countries. The sovereign countries, whom take debt in their own currency and whom they pay their debt in their currency. So mainly this book applies to those countries, and those countries are mainly applicable for the modern monetary theory. But the countries like India, Pakistan, or somewhere the underdeveloping countries like Nepal or other countries like the Gulf or the Middle East, so this book is also applicable for those countries as well. Now, this book mainly tells us that how we can use this money and how we can generate money. So this book mainly illustrates or mainly unlocks those potential about the money and mainly guides us that how we can generate money and how we can use that money in the economy. Now, this book, The Deficit Myth, it contains 8 chapters. The first chapter is about don't think of a household. Now, in this, mainly the political narrative is that the government budgeting and the household budgeting is similar. It's a dangerous anomaly because government is issuer of the currency, where household is not the issuer of the currency. They mainly earn those currency with really hard work and labor, and they pay taxes for government. Where government is, we can see the US government. So the federal government is mainly issuer of the dollars. They can print the dollars according to their demand. And the thing is that Stephanie Kelton said here that deficit is not the problem because government is the issuer of the currency, so government can print money according to their needs. But the main problem here lies is the unusefulness of resources or the unproductive expenditures. The unproductive expenditures are like privileges of the senators or the secretaries or of the government officials. Now, the main problem is this, whereas Stephanie Kelton also illustrates that the main thing is that there is a political narrative about the balanced budget. Now, the balanced budgeting is that they have to decrease spending so that they have a balanced budget. But through this spending cuts, mainly they just deteriorate the economy, they just decrease the unemployment, they increase the unemployment rate, and they just decrease the growth rate of the economy. Stephanie Kelton also illustrates here that the main problem here is about spending the resources, nor that it's about the useful, nor it's about the unproductive expenditures, or it's about the money printing. Now, here Stephanie Kelton also illustrates that government must have to spend the money in the economy, but in a useful manner, without heating up the economy. Now, what is heating up of the economy? The heating up of the economy is that when you use more of the money in the economy, or when you put more money in the economy, so it results in high inflation rate. And the high inflation rate, it mainly illustrates us that the economy is in heating up stage. Now, Stephanie Kelton said that government must have to spend money here in the economy in the productive manner, so that it can increase the livelihood of the households, it can have the good socio-economic factors, and it can increase the demographic factors, and it can increase the well-being of the economic agents. But Stephanie Kelton here illustrates that they don't have to heat up the economy. Whereas the second chapter is about think of inflation. Government must have to think about inflation. Now, the main problem here lies is that when you put more spending in the economy, so it results in inflation. Now, what's the problem of inflation is that when the economy is in full capacity and you put more spending in the economy, so the prices go up because you don't have idle resources to use it. Now, here the Stephanie Kelton said that if you have idle resources in the economy, so you must have to put more money in the economy, and when you put more money in the economy, so it stimulates growth and it reduces the unemployment rate. Whereas the book also illustrates that what's the problem in the deficit. The deficit problem is that only when it outspaces your economic productivity, so then the deficit is the problem. This book also tells us that government doesn't use the taxes and borrowing tools for having funding, because government is the issuer of the currency and government can print more money for their own demand. The main tools are that it reduces inflation rate because you mainly do more spending in the economy, and when you do more spending in the economy, so the problem lies here. Like if we see how the spending can mobilize the resources during World War II, when there was a fiscal stimulus given to the economy, so it was not for the unproductive expenditure, it mainly uses the idle resources in the economy, and that's mainly a good thing for productivity or for using the resources in the economy. Now, there is a problem that with the more economic functioning or with more spending money, we have a misguided fear of inflation. And the misguided fear of inflation is that more oftenly the government overcorrect things in a way that they raises interest rates for cutting down the inflation. Now, for cutting down inflation, when you raises interest rates, so it mainly increases the unemployment rate in the economy and reduces your growth rate, which mainly deteriorates the well-being of the households and the well-being of the economic agents. The main thing is that the media mainly gives the panic about the inflation. They said that the inflation gone up to 40% or to the 50%. But if we see, as an economist, there is a small factor of inflation that must be in the economy so that the economy should go up. That is creeping inflation. Creeping inflation is that the economy should have inflation from 3 to 5%, because the economy have then more growth and the economy can stimulate in that way. If you don't have inflation or if you have deflation, so the economy just stopped here, and when the economy stops here, so you don't have good economic growth in that tenure. Now, what are the tools to manage the inflation? There are mainly three tools. The first thing is that taxes. When you tax the economy, so people don't have money in their hand, so they can't spend it, so they can't increase the demand push side of inflation. The second thing is interest rate. Interest rate also reduces or rationing the demand, because when you raises interest rates, so it mainly that the inflation is cut down, but people can't buy things because they don't have any demand on their hand. And the other thing is regulation, that you regulate the economy or the market so much that people can't have access towards the markets and they can't spend money. And when they can't spend money, so there would no inflation in the economy. The third chapter is the national debt. Now, what's the national debt? Mainly, you have seen that many political peoples have gone to the crisis and they say that we are in a crisis because we have a high national debt. But it's not really the case, because federal government, they doesn't run out of money. They doesn't run out of money because of that they print money of their own. according to their demand, because they are the issuer of the dollars. And if you are issuer of the dollars, then why to take care and why to become so much like the crisis state that we are in a national debt crisis? And we are not in the national debt crisis is of the US government. It doesn't work. These MMT doesn't work for the countries like the underdeveloped countries or the countries those which don't have monetary sovereignties. Now, if we say that how national debt is not a problem, because the government can never run out of money. If the government can never run out of money, it means that national debt isn't a main issue in the economy. Now, the first thing is that what we call the national debt. The national debt is mainly that it's spending of the investor, or it's a saving of the investor. It's the safe side of the investor. It's for this government uses the treasury bills. Now, treasury bills are those bonds where mainly the investors put their money in saving account. If the government spend money and they don't tax other people's, if they don't tax other people, so it means that this income gone to someone else's account and it's in the someone else's income. The other thing is that the national debt flip side is mainly the national saving, the wealth of the investor or the private sector wealth. It's not like the national debt is somehow in a crisis state. What's the problem is that if the debt is used unproductively, like in case of the countries like Pakistan or the underdeveloped countries where the debts are used really badly because they use it in unproductive expenditures. But if we see United States use their debt in the long-term goals, and they have made the economy stimulated. The economy is escalated, the economic growth is escalated because of these debt and because of the economic growth projects. Now, they have used these national debts in somehow a way which is productive. Like if we see in the World War II time, the US government has a GDP to debt ratio of nearly 120%. But now, if it's the 120%, it doesn't mean that the economy is in a deteriorated state, because they have used these 120% of the debt in their own productive expenditures, and they have made the economy better. They have made the economy in a good cycle. Now, what's the problem is that the main problem here lies is the risk of inflation. It's not the risk of the national debt. We have just to take care that the inflation doesn't go up. National debt is not an issue at all because government can't run out of money. It's just the flip side of the private sector investment. Now, the chapter 4 is the red ink is our blue ink. Now, first we have to understand that how the economy operates. Economy have three sectors. The first sector is government, the other is private domestic, and another is foreign. Now, if one sector saves, the other sector must spend. Now, in this way, the economy works in the equilibrium in that way. If both of the sector spends, so the economy doesn't work in that way. Economy works if one sector spends, so the other sector automatically saves. It's not like that both of them just either spend or either saves. It's automatically done that one person's saving is another person's spending, and another person's spending is another person's saving. Now, this is how the economy works. Now, when the government runs deficit, so the private sector runs at a surplus. Now, the government sector is mainly like it's the red ink, and surplus, the private sector surplus, it's like the black ink. So their red ink is our black ink. Their deficit is the private sector surplus. Now, if the government debt is not the problem, debt is not the problem, nor the deficit is the problem, because it's a source of income for the households, for the economic agents. If the government doesn't spend money in the economy, so it won't be somehow the opportunity for people to earn money. So that's why the government must have to spend more money. Government must have to give stimulus checks, government contracts, or social safety net programs. They can work that way that the households can earn money in that way. If the government doesn't run on the deficit, so it mainly creates the problem. The problem created is that if the government runs on the balanced budget, so it mainly deteriorates the economic well-being or the economic growth of the economy, and it always results in the unemployment rate. Now, if we see in the United States in the 1990s, they have recorded a budget surplus, but the budget surplus shortly results in towards a recession. So it means that deficit is not a problem. The problem is that if the deficit is productive or unproductive, nor it's bad, it's good. It's about the impact. If the deficit impact is good, so it means that the deficit is a good thing. Now, here must we have to understand that either the government, they mainly increases their spending in a way that is productive for the economy or not. If it's not the productive for the economy, so then we have to cater for the deficit, because the deficit would result in the more of the economic deterioration rather than economic well-being. Now, the other thing is that if the government runs in a surplus, so the private sector they don't have money. If they have a bigger deficit, so it means that the private sector they have more money in their hand. Private sector is the households, the economic agents, both domestic and foreign as well. Chapter 5 is about winning a trade. Now, the main political narrative in America is that America is losing because it is importing more rather than exporting. Now, Kelton said here that it's a wrong narrative and it's a wrong allegation that America is losing. The only thing here is that America is buying more rather than selling it. Now, what Kelton identifies here is that trade deficit it's not a problem. Why trade deficit is not a problem? Because the trading partner they mainly either invest in the US treasury bills or either in the US dollars. So the thing is that we are getting goods in exchange of paper because US government or Fed they are mainly issuer of the currency, so they can print as much dollars as according to their demand. Here, the Kelton also administered that trade deficit, mainly the political narrative is that trade deficit always results in the unemployment in many sectors. But the thing is that we have to mainly use those displaced peoples in other sectors. We have to make them employed in other sectors rather than we have to cater the trade deficit. The thing is that we can bring opportunities in other sectors for those people that are unemployed due to the trade deficit. Now, the other thing that Kelton administered is that winning a trade means that we are mainly raising the wages, we have good living standard, and we have more employment in the economy, we have good economic growth. Now, the thing is that the people that are mainly displaced, so you must use the fiscal policy for that. The fiscal policy would result in that they would have some educational programs, some training programs, which can result them in other sectors employment. Also, government can administer the PSDPs or governmental contracts that can result in more labor's participation or more employment opportunities in the economy. Now, the chapter number 6 is that you are entitled. Now, what does this mean? Politicians always have the narrative that you don't have the spending to give you the good retirement plans or the social security net or somehow fundings or Medicare. But the thing is that Kelton administered that according to modern monetary theory, you have the funds for this. The only thing is that you have the political will to do these things or not. Stephanie Kelton, she administered that the only thing that is that you must have to ask that you have the resources to use to deliver these things. If you have labors, technologies and goods to deliver those Medicare, retirement plans or social security things, so then you must have to deliver it. The affordability or the things, the money isn't a problem because US government it's mainly the issuer of the currency, so you don't have anything possible that you can run out of money. The thing is that many people believe that government just give our taxes in the trust funds for future use, but the only thing is that it's just the accounting entry. There is no such thing like trust funds. The only thing is that the government prints money and the government prints money for their demand. Now the thing is that either they have the political will to do these kind of things. If they have the political wills to do these kind of things and we have the resources to deliver these things, so then the government must have to deliver these kind of things. Chapter number 7 is about the deficit that matters. Now the things Stephanie Kelton said that we often addresses that the federal budget deficit, it's the main problem. But the main problem is other deficits. The other deficits are the jobs deficits, healthcare, education, infrastructure, climate, democracy. These are the deficits that actually affect the people's life, that mainly affect the US citizens' life, because if you don't have democracy, if you don't have good healthcare system, so it mainly deteriorates the living standard of the people of the economy, and the economic agents mainly deteriorates their life is deteriorating. So the things we have to mainly cater off or we have to think about is either we can solve these deficits or not. Now the thing is that the unemployment is the main problem. If a person gets unemployed, so it means that we are wasting our resources. Now the governments must have to launch such kind of things that can have the unemployment should be vanished and all of the people should be employed, and the economy must have to work on the full capacity. It's because that if we waste these resources, so it wouldn't be helpful for our economy in the long run, and in the long run we must go to the recession case. Now, the thing is that Stephanie Kelton says that we have to balance our economy. We must have to give each person the opportunities, and we have the funds for it. The only thing is the political narrative. The political narrative is that they mainly says that defense have the budget. They may increase the budget for the defense, but they don't increase the budget for other things like healthcare, for education, or for the jobs opportunities. The thing is that political will is really important for these kind of projects. Now, resource problem is also a biggest problem, but the thing is that if we can't invest in environment now, in the economy now, so in the long run, we have to pay more. We have to pay more in terms of that we always would think about that there is a deficit problem, the narrative would be built by the politicians. But the thing is that actually we have to pay more things, and the government must impose more taxes, because government always want people to work, and for making the people to work, they just make them to have taxes more. But MMT gives us another picture, and the picture is that that the economies like US and the economies like those which have monetary sovereignty, they can print their own money, and if they can print their own money, so the resources isn't a problem anymore. The thing is that we have to strengthen the democracy. If we strengthen the democracy and we strengthen the equality in the economy, so the people like populist leader can't come, like Donald Trump kind of people, or in Pakistan Imran Khan kind of people won't come, because there won't be any inequality and there won't be any democratic failures. And if there won't be any democratic failures, so the people, the bad peoples, the authoritarian peoples, or the peoples they just want power, autocrat peoples, they won't come to the government, and people would have good democratic lifestyle or good democratic government in their economy. Now, how we can build a better economy is the chapter number 8, which Stephanie Kelton said is. Now, the thing is that what's the priority? Now, priorities of a government or priorities of a government can be seen, or democratic government can be seen by their budget. Now, what things they allocate more budget to, or what they allocate less budget to. More oftenly, in many countries, defense is more oftenly prioritized. But the thing is that we must have to prioritize the households, we must have to prioritize the well-being of the people, the healthcare of the people, the education of the people, the jobs, the retirement plans, the pension funds, the security nets, not the things like defense or military, because it won't help us in building a better economy. It only leads us to a better defense system rather than a better economic growth, or an illustrative economic growth of the economy. Now, MMT, it just gives us another lens, and the other lens is the affordability of the budgetary things, affordability of that the things which we can envision, they can be possible, they can be affordable, because resources is not a big problem. The only bigger problem that lies is inflation. We have to mainly control inflation to the creeping level. Now, the other thing is deficit, national debt. These things aren't any problem anymore, and we can have built a better economy. Now, the thing is that US government, they have the power to create money, they have the resources of all, they also have guarantee of full employment, and they can give economy a better path. But the thing is that either they have the political will or not. The thing is that they have to give in equality. Equality in the economy is really necessary, or the GNI coefficient, it mainly be good. HDI indicator, that is human development indicator, that must be good. And it only become better if the government spends more money in such sectors that are really productive, that really enhance the people's lifestyle or the household lifestyle. So in that way, we can mainly increase the economic growth and the economic well-being. Now, the thing is, the main thing which MMT shows us, that we won't question this thing that how we will pay. The only thing we will question is that we have the resources to do these things, and if we have resources to do these things, so then we don't have any problem anymore. Now, the crux of these books is that deficit is not a problem, which many of the governments tells us, primarily for the sovereign countries. The main thing is how to build a better economy, and for building a better economy, we must have to use good expenditures, we have to use productive expenditures, and we have to give expenditures for the equality, for the democratic lifestyle, for the healthcare, for education, for pensions, for retirement plans, for governmental development expenditures, for the infrastructure, and these all will help us to build a better economy. And MMT gives us the lens that affordability, everything is affordable. Nothing, we don't run out of money, because government, it mainly just print money. The government just tax the people because they should work, and working the household, they should just engage the households. more oftenly, the affordability isn't an issue, according to the MMT and Stephanie Kelton.